trimester, whatever you call it, is almost over, so it's going to be Jason's problem soon. So. He doesn't fight battles. For you college students who are wondering, the college class starts Wednesday night. That'll be with George, go back in the back classroom. From Faith to Fear, is that what it's called?
Fear to Faith.
Just see if you're paying attention. Well, that didn't make sense when you Okay, let's begin with prayer before we get started this morning. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the night's rest you've given us and the safety you gave us traveling here through the rain. Pray that you watch over others who are on their way, that you keep them safe as well. Help our time together this morning to be profitable, that as we open your word and study from it, we will gain new understanding, but also give us the courage to live it, to make changes where we see are necessary, that we can be more pleasing to you, draw closer to you, and more closely imitate your Son. We thank you for your Son, who was the reason why we are here this morning, to remember his sacrifice, what he did for us, that we could be redeemed and reconciled and forgiven of our sins and restored back to you. And we would never forget that and always appreciate that and share it with everyone we come in contact with, that you might have hope before it is too late. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. For those who have class material, and if you don't, that's okay, but we are finishing lesson 12 this morning. Jason graciously gave me one extra class period, so I'm actually going to finish on Wednesday. And then Jason will start Jeremiah next Sunday. But we got about 2/3 of the way through the next to last lesson, lesson 12, which is on spiritual nearsightedness. And it just used 3 illustrations from the Old Testament of how we can sometimes lose sight of what's really important. We kind of get distracted and lose our focus and think that the things of this world are important, and we lose sight of what's really important. We misplace our priorities. So we talked about Esau being an example of the lust of the flesh, and then David being kind of in that instance a bad illustration of the lust of the eyes. And where we left off is we're getting into Rehoboam this morning. Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, the grandson of David. The king when the kingdom split. When it went from the United Kingdom to the divided kingdom, that was Rehoboam. That's his fault. We're going to address why this morning, talk about the pride of life and how Rehoboam kind of missed the boat there. And then I expect to finish that and also start the next lesson. So we're going to kind of have and half here this morning. Okay, so for those of you who are in your class material at the bottom, page 87 or beginning of page 88, go ahead and turn to 1 Kings chapter 12. We're just going to read the 14 verses that tell this part of the story that we're interested in. Right after the death of Solomon, when Rehoboam is becoming king, and he's trying to decide, what kind of king am I going to be? So 1 Kings chapter 12, verses 1 through 14. I need someone who really likes to read. Speak up loud and clear so everybody can hear. Ethan, thank you. 1 through 14, please.
Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had come to Shechem to make him king. And as soon as Jeroboam the son of Nebat heard of it, for he was still in Egypt, where he had fled to King Solomon, then Jeroboam returned from Egypt. And they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the assembly of Israel came and said to Rehoboam, Your father made our yoke heavy. Now therefore lighten the hard service of your father and his heavy yoke on us, and we will serve you. He said to them, Go away for 3 days, and then come again to me. So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam took counsel with the old men who had stood before Solomon his father while he was yet alive, saying, How do you advise me to answer this people? And they said to him, If you will be a servant to the people today, and serve them, and speak good words to them when you answer them, then they will be your servants forever. But he abandoned the counsel and the counsel that the old men gave him, and took counsel with the young men who had grown up with him and stood before him. And he said to them, What do you advise that we answer this people and have said to me, Lighten the yoke that your father put on us? And the young men who had grown up with him said to him, Thus shall you speak to the people who said to you, Your father made our yoke heavy, but you lightened it for us. Thus shall you say to them, My little finger is thicker than my father's thighs, and now whereas my father laid on you a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the 3rd day. As the king said, Come to me again the 3rd day. And the king answered the people harshly, and forsaking the counsel that the old men had given, he spoke to them according to the counsel of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scourges.
Okay. So let's just make sure we caught all the details so we can get into the discussion. Of course, Solomon has just died, and the people have gathered together. They're going to make Rehoboam king. And the first thing that happens is the people make a request of Rehoboam. What do they ask Rehoboam to do now that he's going to be king? Yeah. Yeah, Solomon had taxed them pretty heavily. They said, ease up on us, please, and we'll be your people and serve you. So that's what they asked. And Rehoboam says, give me 3 days. Let me think about it. Give me 3 days. And who does he talk to kind of help him make his decision? Who does he talk to first? He always talks to the young men. First he talks to the old men, the people who counseled his father. So elders, so older men who've been doing it for a while. And what advice did they give Rehoboam?
To be a servant.
Yeah, tell them, I'll serve you. I forget the wording they use, but take it easy on them. Speak good words to them. Be a servant to them. So do what they say. Give them what they asked for. Is the advice of the old men. And then Rehoboam, I guess, thinks about that for a little bit, but then he talks to his friends, his contemporaries. I don't know what age he is. I'm guessing 20s, maybe 30s, and not old. So youngish for a king. And what do his peers tell Rehoboam he should do?
Even more harsh than I thought.
Yeah. Put the hammer down. Let him know who's boss, basically. And who does Rehoboam listen to? The young men. And we didn't really read any further, but anybody know what happens after this? There's 12 tribes. What do they do?
Split.
They split. And how many of them leave? 10. He keeps Judah and Benjamin. That's it. The other 10 follow Jeroboam, who's not of the house of David. So kingdom split, divided kingdom. Israel north, the 10 northern tribes, they defect. They're like, we're out here. So now, question: why did Rehoboam do that? Feeding him, talking about the pride of life. So I think maybe that's involved in it, as he's using it as an illustration. So, I mean, think of Rehoboam as a young person who's never been king before, doesn't really know for sure what to do, is asking counsel. Why would you had to pick, you had competing advice here, you got to pick one. I guess he could have gone his own way, but he went with this, yeah.
It's often a lot easier to appeal to the advice of the people our age, the people around us, because it feels like, I don't know, they see things from our mindset.
At the time, now maybe in later life, we look back on it and say, maybe that wasn't the best idea, and I wish I'd listened to my parents or the older people who were trying to help me, but sometimes you feel like they're holding you back, or they don't know, they're not with the times, they don't really get it. Maybe that's a little bit what was going on. Some people might relate to that. We do too, looking back at it.
I think some of that's also related to authority. When you're put in a position of authority, it's easy to forget that authority is to be used to serve others, not for yourself. And if I think people in positions of authority, if they feel disrespected, if they feel like someone's not honoring their authority, they react very violently towards them. Rehoboam's position was to serve, but he didn't want to use his position to serve. He wanted them to serve him, because he's the king now. But
Yeah, so while it is true that a king's position is to serve, a lot of people don't look at it that way. I'm the boss. I got to tell you what to do. So we see Rehoboam making that mistake. Is there anything you noticed by omission, that something Rehoboam didn't do in these 3 days that we're told? Right? Say again. Yeah, which is also known as prayer. I mean, maybe he prayed about it and we're just not told about it, but, you know, it's inspired. I'm thinking probably they would have told us if he talked to God about it. He didn't seem to do that. So that's, I would call that self-reliance. I'll figure it out myself. I mean, me and my friends, but you know, not God. God doesn't have anything to do with this. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's pride is an issue for everyone, but maybe especially young people and teenagers. People would think they got it all figured out, and of course we all realize later that I didn't really have this all figured out as I thought. But you know, it feels like I remember that. I still feel like that sometimes. So, any warnings in Scripture about pride? I've got a couple of passages, but anyway, got one that comes to their head. What are we warned about pride? Yeah.
I think about Jeremiah 10, verse 23. It's not necessarily pride, but it's sort of man devising his own.
Okay.
It says, I know, O Lord, the way of man is not in himself. That is not in man who walks to direct his steps.
Yeah.
Saying, like, you know, it's not smart for me to make my own decisions.
Maybe I should ask God. Yeah. So he's saying, I really don't know what I'm doing. I ought to ask God. Rehoboam didn't do that, did he? Yeah.
I also think of 1 Corinthians 10.
Okay.
He lest, or therefore let him who thinks he stands, he lest he fall.
So, any further you want to say? That's real good. I mean,
That's basically what I think of when I think of pride. You know, because you think
I got
you
this.
know it. Yeah, you think I've got this good standing, but you really don't.
yeah, I'm confident. I'm sure I don't need any help. I got this. And that's when we're at our most vulnerable. When we're kind of dismissing God or thinking that we don't need help. We can do things on our own. What does pride go before? A fall. So same idea as when we think we got it all, that's right about when we're in most trouble. Maybe we're kind of spiritually nearsighted. We're not really looking around. Maybe we lost our peripheral vision or whatever. Kind of to tunnel vision, right? We're not seeing everything around us and really thinking about it. In Proverbs 6, there are listed 7 things that the Lord hates. And what's one of them? Go there if you want. Proverbs 6, 16 through 19. A lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood. But one of them that applies to this. Maybe we should do it. Say again. Haughty spirit. Mine, I don't know if it's the same one or if it's mentioned twice. It's not the wording that's right. It's not the wording I was using in my head. Proud look. Is that the same as a haughty spirit, like different translation? Or is it 2 different ones in the list of 7? I forgot. We should look at it. Proverbs 6, 16 through 19. I can't remember. I know lying is kind of mentioned twice. False witness and so on. So haughty eyes in verse 17. That's the way my ESV translates it. So that would be a proud look or a haughty spirit. Is that what you said? Yeah. So something that the Lord hates. It's right up there with hands that shed innocent blood and false witnesses and feet swift running to evil. So that's not a good list to be in. Is pride, man, is pride a big deal or not? Is that something we pretty much got figured out and conquered and we don't really have trouble with that anymore? Okay, so it's something that, I'll do this because I think it's safe to do. Raise your hand if you've never had trouble with pride. You notice my hand's not up. I don't see anybody else's hand up either. Guess what? You're in good company. Or bad company. But we've all struggled with it, right? So it's not like, I just don't there are some sins I have trouble understanding because it's not a temptation for me. I'm not bragging about that. There are plenty others that are a temptation for me, and they probably aren't for you. We were tempted by different things. We all got our... but this one, I think we're kind of, I don't know if I've used the word tempted, we're all susceptible to it. It's like risky. It's just kind of a natural thing that just happens to all of us, I think. Just about. We'll set Jesus aside. but the rest of us, right? So, advice. How, since we all got to deal with it, how are we going to overcome it, or avoid it, or at least ameliorate it, minimize it? Think about that for a second, yeah.
By seeking God.
Okay.
I think all of us at our core are all selfish beings, and I think all
Babies kind of grow up that way, don't they?
yeah. So just looking to God.
Okay. Jason preached a lesson on this recently, and it's in the conclusion in your class book, where when Jesus was tempted, there's a sense in which we can kind of line up the three temptations he went through with: the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And how did Jesus answer Satan each time? Yeah, I couldn't hear you. Seriously. Yeah, quote, it is written. So, look at God's word. That should keep us humble when we recognize that word. It's not meant within man himself to direct his own steps, right? As he said from Jeremiah. So that's good. Tell you what, let's go to two passages in the New Testament that maybe give us a springboard to while you're thinking how we're going to deal with pride here. Philippians chapter 2. I'm going to volunteer to read that. I'll tell you which verses in a second. Philippians 2. 10. I'll tell you in a minute. And then 1 Peter chapter 5. 1 Peter 5, Natalie. Okay, Jan, when you're ready, Philippians 2, verses 3 and 4.
Nothing from rivalry or conceit, but diligently count others more significant than yourselves. And each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interests of others.
Okay. And then Natalie, 1 Peter 5, verses 5 and 6, please.
Likewise, you who are members of the elders, clothe yourselves all of you with humility toward one another, for God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble.
All
Humble
right.
yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that the proper time he may exalt you.
Sorry. Not a verse there. All right, what did you draw out of either one of those that caught your attention that will help here, Ethan?
Well, the first one, looking out for the interests of others, serving others, putting them above yourself.
I think Jason just recently preached a lesson about how it's not about us, which is a lesson that, when we're little, listen, I got a 1-year-old granddaughter. She's learning, but pretty much so far her world has been, it's about me. She's got to learn how to talk and walk and stuff before you can really discipline them and start teaching them that no, teach them the meaning of the word no and all that. So, but yeah, there's a sense in which we kind of start out as selfish beings, and that's something that's got to be kind of trained out of us. And our parents are supposed to do that for us, but some aren't so fortunate, and maybe your parents don't do that for you, and you've got to do it for yourself later on. Self-discipline's tough, especially when you haven't been brought up with it, right? What else from these two passages? Anna?
The quote, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. That's a very, strong,
It's an eye-opener.
yeah, thing to say. If God is opposing me, I'm done. That's it. So it's ironically, it's a very humble thing, recognizing how little power we have and how terrifying it will be to be opposed, to have the Lord opposed to me, and to desiring to humble myself so that I'm not humbled by, the Lord who's
Yeah.
all things.
God opposes the proud. So if I'm proud, God opposes me. If God opposes me, am I going to win? I'm on the wrong side. I can't win. So I've got to humble myself, or be humble. Every knee shall bow. Right? Are we gonna wait until we have someone to make us bow, or are we going to bow ourselves? Better to bow in this life, right, than to be made to when it's too late. Because we're all going to bow. God's in control. Other comments from these two passages in Philippians 2. And I'm getting close. I got one more thing in my notes, but I kind of wrapping this up. So this is your chance, guys. We'll move on to the next lesson soon. 2-minute warning. The other thing I want to bring out, and you can keep thinking, bring it up, what you're thinking just a second, is the Apostle Paul had a lot of reasons to be proud. And so to help him out, what did God do? He gave him a thorn in the flesh. Go ahead and turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 12. I mean, Paul says twice, this is why God did it. So Paul didn't have to wonder, why did God do this to me? Nope, God told him. Or he figured it out, but he knew. Somehow he knew. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 7 through 10. I'll go ahead and read this one. So to keep me from becoming conceited, because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. I didn't use the word pride here, but he used conceit twice, which I think is similar type. What's Paul basically saying here? Is that thorn in the flesh a good thing or a bad thing? What were you trying to say, Gabe?
Good thing.
A good thing. Paul was saying, thank you for giving it to me, God. Kind of was. Although he pleaded for it 3 times to have it be removed, because from Paul's perspective, I could do a better job if I didn't have this. But from God's perspective, why did God give it to him? Or allow it to be given to him? It's a little bit unclear whether God gave it to him or Satan did. But God allowed it. What was God's perspective on Paul's thorn in the flesh? What was the purpose of it? Yeah, so God said, you need it, Paul. Because if you didn't have it, what might happen? Yeah, you might all the revelations and all this fantastic stuff that you're able to do might go to your head, Paul. You need this. And probably most of us can think of, or we could sometimes use, I'm speaking really for myself, I don't really know your situations, but I'm saying, sometimes being humble is the best thing for you. As a coach, sometimes I tell my athletes or fellow coaches, I say, sometimes a loss is a blessing in disguise. You hallucinate fun, but it reminds you, I need to work harder, and I need to appreciate and not take for granted, and think that I got this. So sometimes losses are a good thing in the long run. That's kind of what I think is going on here. All right, I'm basically through my notes. This is your last chance, because we're moving on to the next lesson. So, anything else you want to say about the pride of life? I don't want to be preaching at you. Yes.
Yeah, with talking about this, I think sometimes when we're going through hard things, it's very natural to ask God why and to feel upset that He's given us something hard. And I love this passage because it helps me realize that sometimes the hard thing that I'm going through is God being the most loving and taking the most care of me, because He wants to ensure, like, He cares more about my spiritual well-being. And
Long term.
Yeah, long term. And maybe what I need is something hard right now, because that will bring me closer to Him. So He's actually being, like He talks about a good father giving his children. Maybe I'm being disciplined and being brought closer to Him.
Yeah. I'm going to, 1 second, I'm right back. I won't forget you. Those of us who are older, let's say, I don't know, 40s and up, there's plenty of us. I want you to think back to a time in your life where something kind of went wrong. I mean, maybe you lost a job or whatever, relationships, whatever. And at the time you thought, this is bad. This is bad. But 5, 10, 15, whatever, however many years later, looking back on that, you realize that actually worked out better than maybe that was for the best. How many of us older people, I'm going to raise my hand, have had something like that happen to them? Younger people, look around. It's going to happen to you at some point. And you won't realize until, with hindsight, however many years later, that, you know what? Now I can say I'm glad that happened. I wasn't glad it happened when it happened, but God knew what He was doing. All things work together for good to those who love the Lord. Daniel, what were you going to say?
Well, I don't think that God gave Paul this thorn in the flesh.
Okay.
But I think it's from Satan.
They allowed it.
But God allowed it.
Yeah.
And He can turn the things that Satan does to His purpose.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the same in our life.
He does it all the
It's not God
time.
trying to punish us. Satan there is our adversary. But God can use those things for His glory.
Satan thinks he's winning, and God just says, I got him. To happen with Job, he thought, just a second, I'll come back to you, David, first.
That's all I was going to say. It's going to be Job. That kind of proves what
Yeah.
it's clear that
Job ended up stronger and stronger faith, however we'd say that. Jason, what were you going to say?
And I think connected to that, though, he, understanding, Paul saw the being able to boast in his weakness, and when he was weak, that's when God could use him. I think there's a great benefit in him not looking at this and I'm strong enough to get through this. It was God will get me through this. God's strength will carry me through. And that's part of what I think Paul needed, to not become too prideful. I've got this no matter what's thrown at me. He had to realize, no, in my weakness, Christ has this.
See, all I got to do is threaten you guys with this is your last chance, and then you just... This is really your last chance now. Any?
I think one of the hard things with pride is that it can crop up anywhere in your life. So while you may not be tempted with pride of life in one setting, you'll end up being tempted or overcome with it in another setting. And a lot of times we find that while communication is key, also putting aside your pride in those moments is key. Whether you're working with a coworker, a boss, a spouse, a boyfriend, girlfriend, a sibling, as soon as you put the pride aside and say, it's not about you versus me, it's us against the problem, that's when real communication, real problem solving all happens.
Yeah, listening to the other person. For me, I mean, it's overconfidence. So when I'm doing well in a certain area, I think, I got it figured out. No, I mean, I'm nearsighted. I'm blind to this other area where I got this kind of the same problem, but yeah.
It's interesting because I think we also live in a time where this idea of independence is kind of pushed so heavily.
Self-made.
It's
Americans.
And I often think of Matthew and the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, those who depend on God spiritually." And I mean, that's the key of all of this is depending on God. Which I think can kind of get hazed whenever you live here and think, oh, well, I'm supposed to do it myself, to be independent in that way. So, and there's of course independencies that are good, being independent from your parents, living on your own sometimes, but dependency on God is kind of the way you want to go.
Well, that's why we're here this morning. We don't got to do it by ourselves. That's what God made the church for. That's the whole purpose why we, well, not the whole purpose, but a big part of the reason why we come together, right? To encourage and edify and strengthen one another, to remember Jesus. Yeah, so. All right, very good. We got, what time is it, 10:15? What time do we got class? I don't know how much time. Okay, so we got like 13 minutes left. I do want to get into the next lesson so I can finish it Wednesday night. So, lesson 13, the failure of faith. And he kind of introduces this with the passage from Luke 22. So I do want to go there and read it. It's not long, but kind of set the stage. Luke 22. This would be right at the, I think it was at the Last Supper. Pretty sure. Definitely the last week. I'm pretty sure it was in the Last Supper. Luke 22, verses 31 and 32. One of the things in Matthew we're told that Jesus tells the apostles at the Last Supper is that they're all going to be made to stumble because of him. Jesus knew what was going to go on that night. He was betrayed. But he brings out another aspect in Luke 22, verses 31 and 32. He says this to Peter. He says, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan demanded to have you, that he might sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. I prayed for you that your faith may not fail. What did Jesus know Peter was going to do that night? Deny him 3 times. Did Peter's faith fail? I would say no. So I don't think a failure of faith is sin. That's weakness. But I think failure of faith is more than that, because we all sin. But Jesus is saying, when you turn again. So a failure of faith is where we just give up. Like, we're lost. We're not trying anymore. The word he points out that the Greek word fail, that your faith may not fail, is the idea to die, to be annihilated, to disappear, to just be gone. Yes, Peter was weak, and he denied Christ 3 times. Based on the evidence in Scripture, did Peter's faith fail? Was it gone? No. He made a mistake. Kind of a big one. We probably all would have made it. But the fact that Jesus prayed that Peter's faith would not fail implies what? The fact that Jesus is praying that Peter's faith may not fail implies what is the case?
It didn't fail.
Say it again.
That it didn't fail.
Well, if Jesus' prayer was answered, it didn't fail. True.
Yeah, a moment of weakness, but just because you have a moment of weakness doesn't mean your faith
Right.
failed.
But could it?
Yeah.
Could. It implies that it could. Otherwise, Jesus wouldn't pray about it. So it's possible for his faith to fail. Now, a moment of weakness, I don't think means our faith failed, but it's, we're separated, and we got to, let's turn back. When you turn back.
Does that go to fear, or are you just afraid that it's afraid?
Well, that's one reason why faith would fail. I think that's probably a big factor in why the apostles all stumbled and Peter denied, fear for their life, right? Listen, if I was in Peter's position, you think I would have done any better? I think so. Maybe worse. Yeah.
I think one of the other interesting things there, I agree with you. His faith, I would say his faith didn't fail. You said he made a mistake. He didn't just make one mistake. He didn't just make 2 mistakes. How many times did he deny the Lord?
3.
And where do we even in our culture would be like, how many times can you make a mistake before you're out?
70 times 7.
We'll have like 3 strikes you're out. It's interesting that Peter is the one who asked how many times my brother sinned against me, up to 7 times. And he's 70 times 7. But I still think, that's an example for us where, yes, his faith wavered, yes, his faith struggled, but it didn't fail, even with the 3 denials.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of hard sometimes to say it the way we all agree that that's the best way to say it, so I apologize for not phrasing it the best, but I think kind of on the same page there, David.
Doesn't that kind of go to fear, and everybody has it. In other words, when you see someone, and you probably should reach out and help or say something, and you just don't, and you're just afraid of the result like that. You just, to me, I look at things like we have so many who are afraid. You see a guy, he's got earrings, these things, but you don't want to, you don't want to kind of figure out a way to go. You're just afraid to go near that person. When you really should be, you should know your faith, you should know sports, you should know politics. You should be able to connect some way with that person to get them and slowly kind of build, a faithful relationship somehow, some way. You should be able to.
I don't know if it's fear or just our comfort zone. We've got our place of comfort, and we are not comfortable, and stepping out beyond that. So, and I think that's why evangelism is hard for us. And I was thinking about this recently. And maybe preach it, or not preach, do an invitation on it or something. Maybe I can't now that I'm going to tell you. But anyway, I was thinking the reason, I think part of the reason why evangelism is hard for me, because I don't love other people enough. In other words, my love for other people is not greater always than my love of my own comfort. And that's kind of revealing. It's not a good reveal about me. That's a problem. I got to work on that. Because if we love other people as much as we should be able to overcome our fear and our comfort zone or whatever. And so, anyway, that's kind of my thoughts on that. Other comments here. Yeah, go on.
said, I just see the story as exact opposite parallel of what happened to Judas. Judas made a mistake. He went and, tried to get back the gold, and his faith did fail. He hung himself after it. He couldn't
He gave up,
himself
yeah.
and move on. Whereas Peter is the exact opposite. He did. His faith continued to grow, stronger. Unlike Natalie was saying, learning from those mistakes and made him a stronger person at the end. Continue to be able to preach and spread the gospel.
Yeah, Peter learned from his mistakes. Judas gave up. Despair. Couldn't forgive himself, didn't think he could be forgiven. It's hard to know exactly why Judas hanged himself, but that's my guesses. All right, so this lesson he uses the book of 1 Timothy. So go ahead and turn to 1 Timothy. There are 5 times in 1 Timothy that Paul, writing this letter to Timothy, his true son in the faith, a young man, kind of sort of warnings or illustrations of things that could happen with our faith that he wanted him to be aware of and on guard for. And he used illustrations of each. So first is in 1 Timothy 1, verses 19 and 20. And verse 19 kind of picks up in the middle of the sentence. I'm actually going to go back to verse 18. We'll read 18 through 20. It says, "This charge I entrust to you, Timothy, my child, in accordance with the prophecies previously made about you, that by them you may wage the good warfare, holding faith and a good conscience. By rejecting this, some have made shipwreck of their faith, among whom are Hymenaeus and Alexander, whom I have handed over to Satan, that they may learn not to blaspheme." So, he mentions shipwreck of the faith. That's one illustration in which faith can be shaken or lost. We can, with this complete falling away, but at least temporarily. And he mentions that it's connected here to a conscience. So, wage the good warfare, holding faith and a good conscience. By rejecting this, well, in context, that's talking about holding faith and a good conscience. He's saying, well, what is the purpose of a conscience? Yeah. Okay, it's like that little guy on your shoulder telling you that guilt. We have to make us feel bad when we do something we know is wrong. Should our conscience be our guide? Depends on what. If it's properly trained. So let's assume it's properly trained. Like Timothy's, we know about Timothy's mom and his grandma, so his was pretty well trained, it appears. Paul thought so. Faith was first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and is also in you. So let's say Timothy's conscience was properly trained. Then when Timothy did something wrong, he knew it, and he felt guilty about it. So it was guiding him. And keeping a shipwreck of the faith from happening. So if you'll have to ask yourselves, but if your conscience is properly trained, can your conscience help? Yeah, but when we do something wrong, do we really kind of know it deep down? Even if we kind of try to ignore it or whatever, do we kind of know? It kind of eats at us, doesn't it? So if our conscience has been properly trained, now, can we sear it to the point where it doesn't even bother us anymore? Yeah. Absolutely, and that's scary. Because once you've built up calluses, you don't feel it anymore, right? So that's not a good situation at all. But yeah, one way in which our faith can be shipwrecked is if we conscience is not guiding us. It's not doing its job. It's not properly trained, or we've kind of just sort of desensitized ourselves to it. Let's use that word desensitized for just a second. Is that a danger in American culture, that we can become desensitized to things that are wrong, but we're just around it so much, it just kind of stops bugging us. It doesn't really bother us. Give me some illustrations. What maybe have you just been exposed to so much that it probably doesn't shock you and bother you as much as it used to and should, George?
I mean, it's not just a danger. We're exposed to it, it seems like minute by minute in this country. I mean, we have an entire month based on Pride Month.
Okay, that's a lot of that, right? But even some less, even more, just ubiquitous, just all around us all the time. Yeah.
like filthy language.
Yeah. I mean, some of us where we work, we might just hear from our coworkers all the time, and you know, it bugs us, but we kind of just, so I know that's Joe being Joe or whatever. Yeah.
Get a lot of stress.
Yeah. That's not a problem in Florida, though. Yeah, it's just, I mean, you can't get away from it.
You can't even go to like
Can't go anywhere.
a department store.
Yeah, Target, Walmart, it doesn't matter where.
You go check out, you're surrounded by, let alone, not many
Can't-
people get their dress that way. Just the image of everything.
Yeah, even if it's just advertisements and so on, and it was, like, the people standing in line in front of or behind you or walking the aisles or whatever, yeah, it's just everywhere. So there's a lot of that, and that's a danger, because and we can do it to ourselves also. I mean, like, some of it we choose, like the TV shows we choose to watch, we can be sort of desensitizing ourselves to it. So we gotta be careful about that, because then our consciences, we're sort of untraining our conscience. We're sort of removing the constraints of it. Well, anyway, I didn't get real far in it, but we got started. So we will finish this Wednesday night. College kids, you probably be in, you have to choose whether you George or me. So thank you for participating. Keep this back up Wednesday night.
I could have got more sleep.
Yeah.
That's my own fault though. Yeah. I have died. I have a casting job at Charts for Halloween.
That's dope.
I know. And it is going to be hard. I've told myself I've been staying up to prep for the job, which it's just completely excuse. It's I'm going to have to start really focusing on schoolwork, and I told myself it would probably be easier to manage if I had something hanging over my head telling me, hey, if you don't do this, you're going to fall behind. And having a job that takes up the ability of my own time is going to help me, I think, to get some of that. If it doesn't and I can't keep up, I'll just quit. Because it's seasonal work and it's not going on my resume no matter how long.
Yeah, that's something that you include on your last.
Well, I mean, like, if it would be convenient to work there again, I would, but it's not something. They asked me, so it's not.